Why do you feel everything so intently? Why is it that you are wired differently? Are you wired differently? Because you're not too sensitive, are you? Even though you've been told that your entire life. Hi, my name is Annette Beckham. I am an author, a frequency translator, a guide, and a speaker. And my latest book, The Frequency of Truth, is out now. So exploring consciousness, coherence, and the architecture of the multidimensional human. And within that, I've extracted for these videos elements of it, which I really hope is going to help support and you and your journey, because I've spent years asking why. I've spent years trying to answer the question, is there any reason why life has been so different? And why is it that I do feel everything so incredibly intently? So if any of this does resonate with you, please do like, share, and subscribe and all that amazing fun stuff. If you are new to my channel, hello and welcome. If you've been subscribing and following me for some time, thank you so much for your help, your love, and your support. I really appreciate every single one. So if you want the link to the book, it's all underneath. A lot of these do start off as blogs. So I do read for some of it, but then add more in. But if you would like to read the original blogs, they're in my Substack, which is underneath. All my social medias underneath. And you will hear me maybe referring to Elarion Resonance. That is my website. That's where you can find all of my blogs, my one-to-one work, the book, and so much more. You also have the buy me a coffee if you like to help support this work as well. Thank you so much. So let's get into it then, because the most important thing is you. And trying to navigate this fucking world when all you've been told is that you're too much, you're too sensitive, you've got your imagination's far too much. So let's have a look at describing the deeper layer of how reality might work. And as I said, that's really what I go to in this book, and that's exactly what this particular series is about. So not convincing you of anything, not asking you to believe something new. But, and the one thing I really do say and have put right on the front cover of the book is it's offering language, a framework, and looking at life through a different lens for things you may have been experiencing your whole life. Or maybe even just started to ask questions about. So let's start from the beginning. The question everyone asks. Why do I feel everything so intently? It's one of the most common things I've heard from clients, from readers, from people online, from people in my close community, and so on. And it usually comes wrapped in a particular kind of exhaustion. Like someone who has spent years trying to dial themselves down and still can't quite manage to fit in. Maybe you pick up on the tensions in a room that no one else seems to notice. Maybe other people's moods land in your body, for want of a better way of describing it. Even like they're your own, but they're not. And that might be somebody like nearest and dearest to you. It could be everybody. Maybe certain places feel completely wrong to you the moment you walk into it, or maybe even thinking about them. Maybe even the thought of going to a particular place, it gives you the shivers. The moment you walk in and you can't explain it, but you know. You just know it, don't you? Too emotional, too reactive. And maybe because there was no framework for it, no language for it, and at one point you decided that something was wrong with you, that you were broken. You're not lovely. As I said before, too emotional, too reactive, too much. I want to genuinely offer a different possibility, I guess. What if nothing was wrong? What if the sensitivity wasn't a flaw in your design? But get this, and I get way too excited over this because this is what we're learning about. This is the magic of all this. What if it's the design itself? That sensitivity is your greatest tool. That's quite exciting, isn't it? So what the science actually says, or I believe it does, your body is constantly processing information from all over the place. And within this time and this decade, we are bombarded with so much, more than your conscious mind can actually track. So even like sitting in a room that you've sat in for years, there is still so much going on. There's the light, there's the air, and so on. The nervous system is scanning the environment all the time, picking up on micro expressions, tonal shift, changes in the energy of the space, and signals from other people's nervous systems. Yeah? Still with me? So even if you were talking to a friend who you've known for absolute years, you're still doing all of that all at the same time. So a neuroscience called Stephen Porges, and I'm really sorry if I've butchered that surname, calls this neuroreception, your nervous system ability to detect cues of safety and threat before your conscious mind has caught up. It's happening below awareness all the time, and everyone's doing it. And those of us who are maybe more slightly neurodivergent, we do it even more so. So I've heard. Happy to be corrected. But here's what I've come to understand through years of working in this field and having the experiences myself personally. Some people receive more input, more signal, but because they're broken, but because they're built that way, their system is running a wider bandwidth, just as I was saying. Still with me? So think of it like this. If you have two radio receivers, right? Two radio receivers. And one of them picks up on more frequency than the other, than the other. Is it faulty? Is it not working properly? That sounded very northern, did it? Not working properly. Not working properly, love. Yeah, not working. I don't know where that came from. It's more, maybe it is more of a sensitive instrument. Like you. So, maybe the problem isn't the sensitivity. Maybe, and I've put the problem is that nobody gave you the manual for it. You know, like your parents always say, oh, we had a child and we never got an instruction manual. Well, actually, hold on a minute. We came down to earth being very sensitive, very open. No bugger gave us a manual. We came down to a planet who didn't even know what heart coherence was or emotion or feeling. They've just been spending the past few decades trying to hide that all away. So the neurodivergent connection because there kind of needs to be one, right? I'll share something from my own life because I kind of think it matters here a little bit. So, yeah, I got diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia when I was in my 30s and 40s. Whoop-de-doo. It wasn't again for the label, it was to start understanding how my brain worked. And you know what? I wasn't surprised because, and I use the word neurodiverse, but it could be the fact that you are sensitive, you are more intuitive, you are more psychic, you are more empathic. And when I finally understood that not as a defect, but as something to manage, but as a different kind of architecture, you know what? Something shifted. Sorry, I keep on looking at the screen, which is there rather than at the camera. I will get used to this setup, honestly. So in my experience, ADHD isn't a lack of attention. It's too much of the bloody stuff. You know what we were just talking about in that last bit about picking up on, what's it, micro expressions and tonal shifts and changes of energy in the person and the space. Yeah, if your bandwidth is much bigger, you're picking up on much, much more. So the system tracks everything simultaneously, every frequency in the room, every emotional undercurrent, every shift that most people have learnt through years of social conditioning to filter out. And that's exactly what we were just saying, wasn't it? Dyslexia isn't the inability to process information, it's a different way of processing it. Visual, pattern based, more of a whole system than a linear one. And the sensitivity I'd always had, the thing that had felt the most of my life like a wound. Because, yeah, why was I too different? Why was I the girl in the special classes and so on? Was part of the same system, the brain built to receive more than most, process differently, and move between states of awareness that other people had learnt to block. And again, I think that is key. And in chapter 1, it's slightly more of a slight memoir of kind of like a childhood where like me, I'm sure you were way more aware of it, what was going on with the beings that were around, with the orbs and the lights and the so on and so forth, let alone being on this planet and the different people and the different feelings and the different energies. The list is endless. So I wasn't broken. I was just built for a different kind of knowing, like you. I'm not saying this is somebody's story, but if you've ever felt like picking up on signals that others completely aren't receiving or have absolutely no idea, I want you to sit with this possibility. You might have been right. When you've been trying to explain your feelings and stuff away, but it was difficult. So the antenna, not the fault. So here's the shift that changed everything for me while writing the book. And again, I do have another series of behind the book because it never actually started off as one. It started off as my own questioning and notes for a very long time. But when I started to bring it all together, it was the answers. So if your sensitivity is a receiver, an antenna, if you like, then the question isn't, how do I stop feeling so much? Because I'm sure you're like me, where most of your life you've been wondering, where the fuck is the off button? How can somebody else walk into a room and be absolutely fine where you're either bursting into tears or getting angry or whatever the case may be, and somebody saying, oh, what's wrong with her again? The question isn't how do I stop feeling so much? The question then might be, what am I actually tuning in to? And how do I learn to use this consciously? What do I do with it? How can I use it? That is a completely different question, isn't it? And it leads somewhere completely different and actually quite empowering. It moves you from trying to fix something that isn't broken to begin to understand something extraordinary, completely and utterly extraordinary about you, because you are extraordinary, and about how you're made. So, because here's what I've observed in decades of this work: the people who feel everything most intently are often the same people who, once they have a framework for it, can do things with their perception that others, maybe not necessarily that others simply can't, but or maybe they can't. They can read a room. They can sense what's beneath the surface of a conversation. They know when something is off in a situation before it becomes obvious to anyone else. Because I'm sure you've kind of had a conversation with someone and said something, and they're like, "How do you know that?" And then you go, "I just do." I said, it's not a liability anymore. It's really not. And I put here, that's the gift, operating without instruction. So how does that sit with you just before I end this? That was actually my timer for my dinner, if you heard that in the back. Anyway, what this series is going to do. Over the next few episodes, we're going to look at some of the questions that come alongside this kind of sensitivity. Why do you keep noticing coincidences that feel too specific to be random? Why do you keep attracting the same kind of people and situations, and so on? And perhaps most importantly, what does it mean when you finally have the language for it? The language, the frequency, the knowledge. Because in my experience, the moment people find language for something that they've been experienced their whole lives, something settles, not because the experience changes. It was always real, but because they finally, you can finally hold it and work with it consciously. And that recognition, and that alignment is huge. So if any of this is resonating with you and watching this and thinking, yes, that's me, I've always been like this, I want to know more, well, as a starter, I think you might be in the right place. So as I said, the frequency of truth dives into this more. This series will dive into this more. So please do like, share, and subscribe. All the contact details are underneath. And I do look forward to seeing you in the next episode, which is why do I keep noticing coincidences? Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for staying curious, staying open, and most importantly, staying you. Anyway, thank you so much. I said all the links are in the bio. From my heart to yours. Now I need to go and see to my dinner. See you later.